Have you ever wondered who ruled the heavens and the earth before the name Yahweh was revealed to humanity? If Yahweh is eternal, why does his name only show up at certain points in biblical history? This puzzling question has intrigued mystics and spiritual seekers for centuries. What if what we know is just part of a much deeper, forgotten truth? Get ready to dive into an ancient biblical mystery that few dare to explore. Who was in charge of the heavens before Yahweh was revealed to Moses? Were other celestial beings in control? Or was there a secret name of God known only to prophets and angels before Yahweh's name appeared? Before the burning bush story, the Bible starts with, "In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth." But who or what is Elohim? Is it just a generic word for God or a celestial being? Many believe Elohim refers to a divine plurality, a spiritual force active in the universe before the personal revelation of Yahweh. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. In the oldest Torah manuscripts, there are repeated mentions of a powerful but unnamed God, a creator, a Lord of hosts, a being who reigns yet remains mysterious. In apocryphal texts and Hebrew oral traditions, there are references to the Ancient Ones, the Immutable One, the source of all light. Who were these beings? Were they overshadowed by Yahweh's manifestations or by other celestial rulers? Before the covenant with Israel, what if mighty angels like Michael, Raphael, or Gabriel governed the heavens before the full revelation of the divine name? The Book of Enoch, often overlooked, talks about thrones and dominions, angels who held authority in the heavens long before the earth took its current form. This isn't just theology, it's a hidden code in Scripture, an ancient spiritual secret carefully preserved, one that can change how you see God, creation, and humanity's purpose on earth. Yahweh's name carries incredible spiritual weight, yet it's notably absent in Genesis. Why? Who was in charge before Moses' revelation? Why does the Bible keep so many details hidden until that point? In this video, we'll connect forgotten passages, analyze ancient manuscripts, explore the darkest revelations of Jewish tradition, and challenge official versions with interpretations silenced for centuries. If you're here, it's because you're looking for something beyond the obvious. You sense there's more between heaven and earth than we've been told, and you're absolutely right. This video isn't for those happy with easy answers. It's for those brave enough to face the greatest mysteries, open their minds and hearts to forgotten spiritual realities, and engage with truths revealed gradually, generation by generation. Now take a deep breath and come with me. Let's discover who really ruled the heavens and the earth before Yahweh was revealed to the world. The answer may challenge everything you thought you knew, and what comes next will surprise you even more. Before we continue, I want to invite you to comment below. Have you ever thought about this possibility? Have you considered who truly governed the heavens before Yahweh's name was revealed? Your opinion matters here. This is a topic few dare to discuss, so we need to build a space for exchange, learning, and deep revelations together. By leaving a comment, you're not just joining this spiritual mystery, you're helping this channel reach more truth seekers. Every comment, every like you leave tells YouTube this content is valuable, meaningful, and deserves to be shared. So if this topic is already opening your mind, hit that like button now. This simple act supports the channel and lets me keep sharing rare, mysterious, and revealing spiritual studies like this one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Subscribe to Angel Celesti and turn on notifications. That way, you'll know as soon as new videos on biblical mysteries, hidden revelations, or spiritual messages come out. We're building a community of awakened people passionate about truth and spiritual growth. And you're part of it. Don't let this knowledge go unnoticed. Comment, like, subscribe, and share. The revelation has just begun, and in the next part, we'll dive even deeper into scriptures to seek answers hidden for centuries. If Yahweh is eternal, and the biblical tradition tells us so, then why does his name only appear clearly at a very specific moment in history, right when Moses encounters the burning bush? This might sound simple at first, but it holds a deep spiritual mystery that challenges traditional views of the Bible and divine revelation. Before Moses, before the Exodus, even before Israel became a nation, who ruled the heavens? Who was the name behind creation? Was this name eternal, or was the divine identity revealed progressively as humanity grew spiritually? What fascinates scholars, theologians, and seekers is that in the oldest biblical texts, God is called by many names: Elohim, El Elyon, Adonai, even titles like the Most High or God of Heaven. But the name Yahweh, this sacred, revealed, powerful name, only emerges strongly when Moses is chosen to lead the Hebrew people. That raises an even bigger question. Why did God wait until then to reveal his name? Does it mean there are still parts of God we haven't yet understood? In Exodus 3:14, when Moses asks, "What is the name of the one sending me to Egypt?" the answer is mysterious and deeply symbolic. Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, often translated as, "I am who I am." This moment isn't just about giving a name. It's the revelation of a transcendent divine identity, a being who exists by himself, eternal and without end. But notice that even here, God doesn't say directly, "I am Yahweh." He says only, "Tell the people of Israel, I am has sent you." It's only in the following verses that he adds, "This is my name forever, and this is how I'm to be remembered through all generations." But before that, who was the God who spoke to the patriarchs, who walked with Abraham, who guided Noah, who blessed Isaac and wrestled with Jacob? For example, in Genesis 17, when God appeared to Abraham, he identified himself as El Shaddai, the Almighty God, yet Yahweh's name isn't mentioned. In other passages, like Jacob's dream of the ladder reaching heaven, the divine voice calls himself the God of Abraham and Isaac. Still, the name Yahweh remains hidden. Does this mean the revelation of God's name came gradually? And if so, what else hasn't been fully revealed? Maybe parts of the divine only showing up when humanity is ready to receive them spiritually. This idea suggests that God chooses specific moments in history to reveal different aspects of his identity, and each name carries deep spiritual meaning, often tied to the kind of relationship he wants to build with people at that time. For example, when he calls himself Elohim in Genesis, he appears as the powerful creator shaping the universe with his word. As El Elyon, he's the Most High God above all powers. And as Yahweh, he reveals himself as the God of the covenant, a personal, intimate God who walks with his people. So it's possible the name Yahweh isn't new itself, but a spiritual key revealed only when the people were ready for this dimension of the divine. If that's true, what does it say about us today? Could we be on the edge of a new revelation? Could God be ready to reveal another aspect of himself to a generation beginning to awaken spiritually? This idea is not just fascinating, it's challenging, because it pushes us beyond traditional theology and invites us to look at sacred texts with fresh eyes, more open and curious. It encourages us to explore the gaps in Scripture, the silences that speak louder than words. It forces us to face the fact that for centuries, the name Yahweh has been hidden, maybe even forbidden to say, as it still is in Judaism today. If Yahweh's name is such a powerful revelation that it changed the course of faith, then we need to understand why it wasn't used from the start. and what came before it. Because if there was a time before Yahweh's name was known, then someone or something ruled the heavens and the earth. The creation already existed. The universe followed divine laws. Angels served the heavenly throne. This shows the divine presence has always been here, but hasn't always been revealed the same way. And that's where the deepest mystery lies. Looking closely at the oldest Bible passages, we see God described, but rarely named precisely. In Genesis 1, for example, Elohim creates everything, but the text doesn't explain who Elohim is. Is it just a generic name for God? A title? A plural being? A divine collective? The word is plural, which opens even more room for interpretation and mystery. And that's on purpose. It's as if the scriptures themselves invite us to seek, question, and dive deeper into this ocean of hidden meaning. That's the beauty and the challenge of sacred texts. They don't reveal everything at once. They test the heart and mind of those who read them. Only those hungry for knowledge, thirsty for truth, and courageous enough to question what's always been accepted can find the hidden gems between the lines. That's why you're here. Because something inside you senses there's a greater divine reality beyond ordinary religious stories. You feel the gaps, the unanswered questions, the missing names, the untold stories. You know there are secrets in heaven, and those secrets are starting to come to light. And I want to invite you to be part of this journey. Share your thoughts. Do you believe God still has hidden names not revealed to humanity? Or do you think Yahweh has always been the only name, just kept hidden for specific spiritual reasons? Write your ideas in the comments. I want to hear what you think came before Yahweh, or what future revelations might be. Your voice helps build this community of spiritual seekers. Before Yahweh's name was revealed to Moses, people's understanding of God was fragmented, wrapped in symbolic names, cultural images, and limited by each generation's spiritual awareness. The concept of God before Moses wasn't unified. It wasn't yet about one exclusive personal name. Instead, ancient people, including the biblical patriarchs, used various names: Elohim, El Shaddai, El Elyon, Adonai. Each name expressed a different aspect of the divine, a facet of power, majesty, or closeness to humanity. But none of these carried the weight, spiritual impact, and eternal significance that Yahweh's name would later hold. When we read the first chapters of Genesis, something really interesting stands out. The most common name used for God is Elohim. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. That's how the Bible opens, and right away we start to see the depth of the mystery. Elohim is a Hebrew word that's grammatically plural, which has sparked a lot of debate over the centuries. Some scholars say this plurality expresses divine majesty, a plural of respect. Others think it points to a plurality within the divine essence itself, an idea that later shows up in concepts like the Trinity in Christianity or the multiple attributes in Jewish mysticism. But here's the big question. If Yahweh existed from the very beginning, why doesn't he appear clearly at the start of creation? Many people get stuck here or just accept it without questioning. But the absence of the name Yahweh in these oldest texts might mean something deeper. God hadn't fully revealed himself as Yahweh yet. He was still wrapped in mystery, symbols, and indirect appearances. Only those who sought him earnestly could grasp parts of his essence. But the personal name that would reveal his identity stayed hidden. And this fits perfectly with the idea of progressive revelation, where God reveals himself as humanity becomes spiritually ready. The patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, had profound experiences with God, but never called him Yahweh directly. They used names like El Elyon, the Most High God, El Shaddai, the Almighty, and Adonai, Lord. These names go back to ancient roots and were even used by other peoples in the Middle East, showing the idea of a supreme deity wasn't unique to the Hebrews. What sets Yahweh apart is that it's an intimate, relational, and exclusive name, a covenant name symbolizing a promise and close spiritual relationship with Israel. It's only in Moses' story that Yahweh is revealed fully and uniquely, and that revelation didn't happen by accident. It came at a moment of spiritual liberation and change, a dividing line between the ordinary and the sacred. The Hebrew people were slaves in Egypt, cut off from their heritage and caught up in a polytheistic world full of gods who didn't represent the true God. It's in this setting that God reveals himself as Yahweh, a name loaded with the weight of eternity, the power of self-existence, and the promise of redemption. This change of name isn't just a word swap, it's a spiritual transformation. Before, God was the God of the fathers, the God Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob worshipped. But now God presents himself as Yahweh, the one who is, who was, and who will be. A living, active God, stepping into human history to transform, free, and shape his people's true spiritual identity. Here's a crucial point. Until then, God hadn't revealed his name to anyone. In Exodus 6:3, God tells Moses, "I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but by my name Yahweh I did not make myself known to them." That's powerful. It means even the great patriarchs who walked with God, heard him, and served him, didn't know his personal name. They knew his power, his presence, his voice, but Yahweh's name stayed hidden. It's as if Yahweh's name was reserved for a new chapter in the relationship between heaven and earth, a spiritual key, an access code to a fresh level of divine revelation. And that key would only be given when people were ready, after enduring pain, slavery, and oppression, crying out for freedom. So the name Yahweh isn't just theological info. It's a spiritual turning point, marking a shift from the old religious ways to the new covenant with God. But that raises another question. If Yahweh was only revealed then, who or what was running things in the spiritual realm before? If the name was hidden, who kept order in heaven? Who heard the prayers of the righteous? Who answered their cries? Were there other names, other intermediaries, other spiritual beings representing divine authority? This is a tricky but important question because, for example, the Book of Enoch describes a complex heavenly hierarchy with archangels, principalities, thrones, and powers acting on behalf of the Most High. It's possible these beings governed and administered before Yahweh's name was revealed to people, and maybe ancient nations understood the divine through these secondary figures, these representatives of the celestial throne. Also, looking at Israel's neighbors, like the Canaanites, Babylonians, and Sumerians, we find divine names like El and Elyon, which the Hebrews also used early on. This suggests that knowledge of the true God was scattered and fragmented until it was gathered and uniquely revealed through Israel's covenant. So Yahweh's name is the peak of that revelation, not because it suddenly came into being, but because that's when God chose to reveal it. It's as if before then, God communicated through echoes, reflections, and shadows of his true self. By revealing his name, he breaks the silence, lifts the veil, and says, "Now you will know me as I truly am." And even today, that name holds so much mystery, many prefer not to say it aloud. In traditional Judaism, out of respect, it's often replaced with Adonai, or simply Hashem, the name. This shows the spiritual weight it still carries, which makes us wonder, Are we about to receive new revelations, new names, new ways God reveals himself? If God revealed himself step by step in the past, why wouldn't he do it again now? If Yahweh's name came to a people crying out for freedom, what might he have in store for a generation searching for meaning, purpose, and light in the darkness? If you're watching this, I want to hear your honest thoughts. Comment. The name Yahweh was the beginning, not the end, or right. I want to understand who governed before the revelation. These phrases will help us keep moving forward together on this journey of deep spiritual discovery. At this pause, a question keeps echoing in our minds and hearts. If Yahweh only reveals himself later in Moses' story and the liberation of Israel, what divine name or identity was recognized from the very beginning? And here we come to the heart of one of the Bible's greatest spiritual mysteries, the figure of Elohim. With this word, which opens the book of Genesis, it's as if the text is already preparing us to dive deep into something far greater than we can grasp at first glance. Genesis 1:1 tells us, "In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth." This well-known phrase, repeated by scholars and believers through the centuries, holds a mystery few truly explore. Elohim, though usually translated as God in the singular, is actually plural in Hebrew. And this plurality isn't just a linguistic quirk. It's a gateway to understanding the multiple, maybe even collective, nature of the divine presence in the earliest days of creation. Now think about this. The very first verse of the Bible, the foundation of all Western theology, starts with a plural form for the Creator, and that's no accident or afterthought. The plural form is there for a reason. But why would the Bible open its story with a word that points to multiplicity within the divine? This alone should make us stop and reflect. We're dealing with a deity that clearly goes beyond a single, simple consciousness, beyond how we usually think. The presence of Elohim hints at something more complex, more complete, more majestic. Some scholars call this the plural of majesty, a way to express authority or greatness, but others see it as a spiritual clue, a seed of revelation planted in the text for those ready to see and hear. Elohim can be understood as a title, yes, but also as a plural identity within the divine being, a kind of spiritual collective, not different gods like polytheism suggests, but aspects, manifestations, or even distinct consciousnesses coexisting within the divine unity. And that changes everything. If Elohim is plural, we need to rethink the idea of God as a single, isolated figure. Instead, from the very start, the Creator presents himself as a full, multiple being in attributes, complex in spiritual makeup, maybe even organized in a hierarchy. It's like we're looking at a heavenly throne not held by one entity, but by a collection of forces, names, aspects, and essences working together to create and sustain the universe. This view doesn't erase God's oneness. It expands it, lifting it beyond simple human understanding. And maybe that's why Yahweh's name doesn't appear at this stage, because Yahweh reveals a more intimate, personal, relational side of God, while Elohim expresses the universal, transcendent Creator who governs all from a throne beyond time and space. It's fascinating that throughout the creation story, the name Elohim stays central. And Elohim saw that it was good. Elohim said, "Let there be light." And Elohim created man in his image. The building of the material world, the heavens and earth, light and darkness, waters and sky, life and death, is all credited to Elohim. The name Yahweh only appears later, connected to humankind, covenants, and the closest spiritual encounters. Elohim can be seen as the cosmic creator, the one who brings order to chaos and sets the universe's laws. But here's a more provocative thought. If Elohim is plural and used from the start, could it represent a celestial council, a group of divine beings acting in harmony under a supreme authority yet to be revealed? This opens a huge area for reflection. If Elohim holds a plurality, then early on the heavens might have been governed by multiple spiritual intelligences working as an organized structure, almost like divine government. This idea resonates with other mysterious Bible passages, like in Job, where the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, or Genesis 1:26's, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Here we stand, on the edge of a revelation that asks us to rethink everything we thought we knew. This key verse is crucial because God again speaks in the plural. Let us make, not I make, our image, not my image. This plural language shows up at important moments in creation, suggesting it wasn't a lone entity making these cosmic decisions, but a divine council, a spiritual assembly, a multiplicity acting as one. If that's right, then before Yahweh's name was revealed, the heavenly throne was governed by this spiritual structure called Elohim, not a personal I, but a collective title representing creative power. That could explain why ancient texts talk about God with awe, but without intimacy. He was powerful but distant, creator but not yet personal. Only later, when this entity chose to reveal intimacy, did names like El Shaddai and eventually Yahweh come into use. And that changes how we understand God's plan. If Elohim is collective and Yahweh is personal, then salvation's story is also one of a growing closeness between the divine and humanity. First came the cosmic, majestic creator ruling by spiritual laws. Then the Creator drew near, revealed His name, and entered into covenant with people. This helps explain why Yahweh's revelation was so astounding. It's as if the heavenly collective stepped forward and said, "Now you will know me for who I truly am, not just for what I've done." This transition marks a new spiritual era, and that's why it's so important to go back to the beginning, to the name Elohim. Because everything started with that name, mysterious, plural, vast, and powerful. It's a name that might still be active today, spoken in voices we don't recognize, in dimensions we haven't accessed yet, in heavenly gatherings where the fates of nations and souls are decided. And maybe the name Yahweh is just one among many that will be revealed as we grow spiritually ready to understand these sacred mysteries. If you feel like there's more behind the name Elohim than what's usually taught from the pulpit, if you sense that something greater is hidden, waiting to be uncovered, then this message is for you. And now I want to hear from you. Comment below. Elohim is more than a name, it's a mystery. Or right, I want to understand divine plurality. Your words help this video reach more truth seekers and show that you're part of a generation that won't settle for surface-level answers. Building on the mystery around Elohim, let's dive into an even deeper and more thought-provoking idea. Before the name Yahweh was revealed, and before the Creator appeared directly to the people, the governance of heaven and earth was handled by higher spiritual beings. What if the heavens were managed by archangels and high-ranking angels acting as temporary agents, representatives of a supreme authority not yet fully revealed to creation? It might sound bold, but this idea gains ground when we look at the scriptures with an open mind and a spirit of inquiry. The Bible is full of references to spiritual beings with specific roles: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel. Names loaded with purpose, mission, and authority. Sometimes they operate at such high levels that we might ask, did these angels govern on behalf of the highest power long before humans even knew the name? It's fascinating to consider that, in the silent space between Genesis and Exodus, there was a well-organized spiritual system, a sacred hierarchy where these beings of light, created before humans, acted as cosmic administrators. They maintained the spiritual order of the heavens and oversaw the unfolding of the divine plan in the visible universe. If we think of Elohim as a plural title or an expression of divine multiplicity, it's not surprising to suppose that angels and archangels were given authority to act and make decisions about parts of creation. For example, Michael is called the Great Prince in Scripture, the protector of God's people, portrayed as a warrior, defender of the divine throne, one who battles dragons, fights spiritual corruption, and guards the heavenly realms. But what if Michael was more than just a defender? What if, before Yahweh was revealed, he had an even larger role? What if Michael was a temporary ruler of the heavens, a kind of spiritual viceroy working under the orders of the supreme God not yet fully revealed, keeping order until the next phase of revelation? And Gabriel, always linked to divine communication, the announcer, revealer, messenger, who heralds the births of John the Baptist and Jesus, and is considered one of the most important messengers not just in the Bible, but in other religious traditions as well. What does that tell us? That he had direct access to the divine presence, moving between dimensions, from invisible to visible, delivering sacred messages, eternal instructions, and hidden plans. He was a being with that level of authority among those leading the cosmos before humans appeared. Now, if we consider that while the name Yahweh remained hidden, these beings, Michael, Gabriel, and others, carried out spiritual governance and made decisions in the name of a God not yet directly revealed to people, not because this God wasn't real or active, but because his plan required stages of revelation, spiritual processes, and precise timing for each step of revealing divine truth. This fits perfectly with the progressive nature of biblical revelation. From the beginning, we see a God who speaks through visions, dreams, angels, and signs. A God who uses intermediaries, picks messengers, and sends heavenly beings to prepare the way until he reveals himself. The apocalyptic books, like Daniel and Revelation, reinforce this idea of a structured heavenly government. Angels appear as officials assigned to protect nations, announce judgments, seal prophecies, open books, and sound trumpets. We hear about angels with power over the four winds, those controlling Earth's elements, angels holding the keys to the abyss, titles that show real authority. And authority here isn't just symbolic. It means command, responsibility, hierarchy, and above all, trust from the Creator. Furthermore, the thrones, dominions, principalities, and powers Paul mentions in his letters also point to this unseen structure running the heavenly realms. While many think of these terms only in connection to fallen or opposing forces, the Bible presents these spiritual orders as governing parts of a bigger system. That means, long before God revealed himself personally on earth, the universe's administration was carried out by these spiritual beings, each fully playing their role in the name of the Most High, who remained silent to mankind. This perspective helps us understand why so many ancient cultures, even those unfamiliar with Yahweh, talk about intermediate gods, messengers, and celestial forces that protected, punished, guided, and instructed. Maybe these were distorted echoes of the truth. Maybe they caught glimpses of those angels and archangels who truly acted as temporary leaders during a time when God's name was still hidden. This also explains why these figures show up differently across various mythologies. The names change, the settings shift, but the pattern stays the same. Beings of light with great authority coming down to earth, interacting with humans, giving instructions, punishing wrongdoers, and announcing times of change. But be careful. This doesn't mean the angels were worshipped on their own or tried to take God's place. Whenever angels interact with people in Scripture, the message is clear. They don't accept worship. They point beyond themselves, saying, "Don't worship me, worship God alone." This shows their authority was real but always subordinate. They led the spiritual realms, yes, but never on their own behalf, always acting in the name of the one whose name hadn't yet been revealed, Yahweh. The idea of angels leading before God's direct revelation invites us to look at biblical history with fresh eyes. Maybe it wasn't silence from God, but a carefully planned unfolding. A perfect plan where each stage of humanity's spiritual journey comes with specific revelations. Names revealed at the right time, roles carried out until the full divine truth could be shown. And maybe we're still in the middle of that process. Maybe the name Yahweh was just one step. Maybe there are other names, other faces, other divine manifestations we haven't seen yet because we're not ready. And perhaps those same angels who ruled before are still at work today, not as rulers but as guardians of the apocalypse, sentinels of truth, waiting for the right moment to guide us further. If you feel there's more to discover about these spiritual beings and your place before Yahweh's direct appearance, I want to hear from you. Comment here. The angels held the throne until Yahweh revealed himself. Or write, I want to understand celestial governance before the covenant. These phrases don't just mark your presence on this journey. They also help this content reach more people eager for deep spiritual insight. We've already explored the powerful idea that archangels like Michael and Gabriel may have held spiritual leadership before the name Yahweh was revealed. Now we need to go even deeper. Although not part of most official scriptures, apocryphal and mystical texts introduce us to high-ranking spiritual figures, including one often called the Ancient of Days. This title carries huge spiritual weight, referring to someone before time, before creation, even before human language could name the unnameable. More than that, he shows up as a silent, supreme authority before whom even the greatest angels bow. In one of the most striking visions described by Enoch, he sees thousands upon thousands and myriads upon myriads of celestial beings around the throne, so ancient that his existence predates everything, yet his name is never spoken. He's only called the Ancient of Days, or the Ineffable. This title appears in other texts too, especially in early Jewish mystical traditions like Merkabah mysticism and primitive Kabbalah. In these writings, God is described as one whose name cannot be spoken because he's above all language, beyond any mental concept or spiritual image. Invisible, unknowable, uncontainable, inaccessible, unspeakable, not because he's distant, but because he's too vast for the human mind to grasp. These texts say that before the visible world existed, before the word was spoken, he already existed fully, and it is God who brings forth all other names and manifestations, including Yahweh. This fits perfectly with what we've been discussing. The revelation of the name Yahweh was just one step on the divine plane, but before that, there was a supreme presence, an infinite source, an eternal spirit silently governing heaven and earth, without a specific name, without labels, without limits. This being was already here, maintaining cosmic order, guiding angels, supporting creation, and at key moments in history, he made himself known not by name but through his glory, the intensity of his light, and the awe he inspired even in the highest spiritual beings. In the book of Daniel, part of the official scriptures, we also find the figure of the Ancient of Days. Daniel describes a vision of this being sitting on a fiery throne, surrounded by thousands of spiritual beings. The language is full of symbols and metaphors. But it's clear this being is supreme, eternal, and that other thrones bow before him. In other words, he is the one even angels honor. Yet Daniel never calls him Yahweh. Why? Maybe because at this level of divine presence, a name isn't needed. Names are for humans. Names are for relationships. Names are for covenants. But before covenant, before people, before apocalypse, there was only him. When we look at these apocryphal and mystical texts, we see this idea repeated, that there is a supreme being not yet fully revealed to the world, but known by the angels, revered by all spiritual beings, who chooses to stay hidden until the right time. For example, in the book of Jubilees, the patriarchs are aware of God's presence but don't know his true name. They serve him, fear him, follow him, but the name Yahweh remains unknown. This supports what we said earlier about the gradual revelation of God's name over the course of spiritual growth. The name doesn't just appear suddenly. It unfolds step by step as people become spiritually ready to receive it with responsibility and reverence. Interestingly, even in the Gospels, Jesus talks about an intimate relationship with the Father that goes beyond the idea of a distant deity. On several occasions, he refers to God simply as Father and says that no one knows the Father except the Son. You know the name but not the essence. You speak of God but don't truly see him. I have come to reveal who he really is. This raises the question, even with the revelation of Yahweh in the Old Testament, was the fullness of God's identity truly understood? Maybe the name Yahweh was just one step, a bridge, an introduction, but the being behind that name remains a deep mystery, an ocean of light, wisdom, and glory that apocryphal texts only begin to touch on. That brings us back to the idea that before Yahweh revealed himself to Moses, the spiritual rule over heaven and earth was already happening, not just through angels and archangels, but also through that silent, supreme presence, often called the Ancient of Days, or the Ineffable. This presence, even without a name, was recognized, feared, worshipped, and obeyed in heaven. And if this presence has governed all from the very start, then the revelation of Yahweh was like an opening, a door between the invisible and visible, the eternal and temporal, the unspoken divine and human language. But is that revelation complete? Or are there still other names, other forms, other dimensions of the divine yet to come? If this sparks something in you, if it stirs your spirit, write in the comments, "The Ancient of Days reigns forever," or "I want to know the ineffable." These phrases help share this message with others who, like you, feel there's more to discover. Continuing this deep and compelling spiritual journey, we come to one of the most powerful and mysterious moments in the Bible, the revelation of the name Yahweh to Moses at the burning bush. So far, we've explored many layers of mystery. How Elohim appeared early in creation as the expression of the Creator's divine power. How archangels and angels led spiritually in the name of a God still hidden. And how apocryphal and mystical writings introduce us to this supreme being with titles like the Ineffable or the Ancient of Days. All of this sets the stage to grasp the immense spiritual depth of what happened when Moses, out in the wilderness of Midian, was called to a burning bush that didn't burn up. This was more than a strange event or a simple task. It was a paradigm shift, a turning point in how the Creator related to humanity. Until then, God had appeared through visions, angels, dreams, and fleeting appearances. The patriarchs knew him as El Shaddai, the Almighty, Elohim, the Most High. But none of them had received the revelation of a name that expressed not only God's power but the very essence of his eternal, unchanging, ever-present being through all time. It was only with Moses, in the middle of a seemingly impossible call and a mission that defied logic, that the name Yahweh was revealed. I am who I am. And this revelation didn't come quietly. It came surrounded by fire, awe-inspiring, full of authority, yet deeply intimate. In that moment, God wasn't just giving an order. He was revealing who he really was in a way never seen before. The burning bush itself is a rich symbol. Fire that doesn't consume, a presence that doesn't destroy, but transforms. A divine manifestation that calls out, demanding reverence but inviting man to come closer, barefoot. Moses hears the voice, "Moses! Moses!" As he approaches, God says, "Don't come any closer. Take off your sandals, because the place you're standing on is holy ground." This call marks more than the start of a mission. It's a spiritual initiation, and shortly after comes the great revelation. Moses, unsure and confused, asks, "When I go to the people of Israel and say, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what should I say?" God answers with a phrase that echoes forever, "I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel, 'I am has sent me to you.'" This simple phrase carries immense spiritual meaning. God isn't just giving a name. He's defining his essence as pure existence, absolute presence, the being who is self-sufficient, infinite, without beginning or end. In Hebrew, the phrase Asher Ehyeh can also be translated as, "I will be what I will be," a declaration that goes beyond linear time. So Yahweh isn't just a name. It's a spiritual revelation, a way for God to say, "Now you'll know me not only by what I do, but by who I am." And that changes everything. From that moment on, the relationship between God and humanity, especially between God and Israel, takes a whole new direction. The God who was once just a distant, powerful creator known by general titles now reveals himself with a personal, intimate name that carries the promise of ongoing presence. Yahweh walks with his people, hears the cries of the oppressed, and intervenes in history with strength and power. He's not only the God who created the universe, but the God who comes down to liberate, guide, and transform. The name Yahweh marks the shift from absolute transcendence to active immanence, from the God above to the God who lives among his people. But there's even more here. By revealing his name to Moses, God is giving a spiritual key. A name carries power, identity, and when called out in faith, it moves unseen forces. And that's exactly what Yahweh represents. It's an invitation into covenant, a seal of intimacy, a spiritual password that opens doors of revelation for those who connect with the divine presence. This name wasn't revealed to Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. They walked with God, heard his voice, received promises, but only Moses received the name. This shows that Moses' generation was stepping into a new level of relationship with God, a level where hearing isn't enough. You must know, where fearing isn't enough. You must trust, where following isn't enough. You must walk side by side. And that same spiritual progression still applies to us today. Many live in the realm of Elohim. They recognize a creator. They honor a higher power, but they haven't yet entered the realm of Yahweh. They haven't yet received the intimate revelation of I am. They haven't realized that God doesn't just want to be worshipped from a distance, but wants to be known, called by his name, a name accessed through faith, reverence, and surrender. And maybe right now, the Spirit is drawing you to this new level, calling you as he called Moses, with a fire that doesn't burn, inviting you to take off your sandals, to shed ego, distractions and excuses, so you can hear, I am with you. The name Yahweh became the heart of Israel's faith. It was sung in songs, written on scrolls, carved on monuments, but it was also protected, hidden, and treated with deep respect, almost with fear. Over time, the name became so sacred that the scribes refused to say it aloud, replacing it with Adonai, or simply Hashem, the name. This shows respect, but also the mystery around the name, a mystery that still remains today. Even though we pronounce Yahweh, we may not have fully grasped what he wants to reveal through that name. Maybe we're still standing on the threshold of what he intends to show us. And if that was true for Moses, why wouldn't it be true for us? What if, just like God revealed himself in a new way to that generation, he's about to make a fresh revelation to this generation, one even more intimate, deeper, and more transformative? If this resonates with you, if you feel the moment at the bush isn't just a story, but a personal invitation to your life, comment below, "Yahweh calls me by name," or write, "I want to know who I am in his eyes." These phrases show your commitment to this journey of spiritual discovery. If you've stayed with me until the end, it's because something inside you is awakening. And that's no accident. You're part of a special group who aren't satisfied with the surface but seek deep spiritual truths, genuine knowledge, and a real connection with the highest mysteries. So I invite you now, subscribe to Angeli Celesti, hit the notification bell, and join this growing community of people living with purpose, awareness, and a thirst for truth. If you've made it to the end of this video, comment below, "I seek a complete revelation." This lets others know you're serious about this journey and helps YouTube recognize that this content is real, relevant, and deserves to reach more people. And of course, leave a like. This is crucial for the channel to grow and for more seekers like you to find this life-changing message. Before you go, the next video is already waiting here on your screen, ready to take you even deeper on this spiritual journey. Click on it now and keep going with me, because what you'll find there is even more powerful. Let's go together.